My name is Emily Wilbourne. I am an associate professor of musicology at Queen's College in the Graduate Center in the City University of New York. I'm one of the co-organizers of this conference, and I'm just here enjoying myself, I guess, at this point. Most of the work that I did has already happened. Hetty's so much in charge of the logistics, and I'm the editor of Women in Music, and we're going to send all the papers from this conference out for peer review and have a special issue on precisely on this topic. So I'm hoping to publish all of these papers. So my work will reignite afterwards. So right now what I'm doing is just listening to the papers and really celebrating the fact that they're happening.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. I wrote the call for papers for this conference. So I initially thought it would just be a session at the AMS because the LGBTQ study group has a session. And I kind of wrote it in a moment of anger at a paper that I heard that was very racist, but that assumed because it was talking about gay people and gay performance that the racism was not a problem and it was just a joke, and it was like we were still celebrating this like radical performance practice. And I felt so both infuriated and silenced by the paper and the way in which it was responded to by a number of people who seem to take that as perfectly okay, that like because we're doing queer work, our work is radical and political. And there's so much other work that's happening, and yet the conference paper situation was not one where you can stand up and say there's a problem here without it becoming a really personal attack. And so in the moment, nobody said anything really critical, and yet it left me with such a kind of bad feeling, and I felt like I needed to personally do something to create a space in which these questions got really foregrounded so that kind of mistake wouldn't happen in such an unself-conscious way. That this work is happening. I mean, one of the things Eli said in their paper earlier today was that sometimes people come to you and you can't think of the sources on the tip of your tongue, but the work is out there and people have been doing really awesome work, and I want more of that work to happen. And I just, I got tenure last year. I'm finally at this point where I can be one of the gatekeepers of the discipline, and I wanted to be opening the gates to the kind of work that I think needs more of a institutional foundation, because it critiques the very institutional foundations. And so I saw it as a kind of panel session possibility, but I showed the call to papers that I'd written to Stefan, and Stefan said, this is a really great idea, we should make it bigger than a session, we should have a study day. And so then I said, if we're going to have a study day, we really need to find somebody at the university. And then I was like, Vancouver, UBC, hang on a second. And I got on the web and I was like, yes, Hetty's there. And I reached out to Hetty, and Hetty was like, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. We can apply for grants. And I was just like, okay, I will do whatever you'd say. So Hetty did all of this amazing logistical organizational work, and I basically just wrote whatever she said. So she'd be like, we need a page saying this, and I'm like, done. And so I kind of churned out the material, and she pieced it into this application, and we got the funding, and so we were able to put people up and have food and turn something that might have been scrappy into something that really feels really substantial, which I think is really important for these parts of the discipline, to be able to have a voice that speaks back but gets to do so from a position that has some kind of institutional authority is really important. And I woke up this morning after having heard those two papers yesterday, and because of the time difference I actually woke up on my own and felt rested, and I just lay in bed before I got out of bed just thinking how restored I felt from hearing those papers yesterday, and just to feel like I helped create the space where these people could say these things. I just felt so great this morning, and I to just get up and be like, I'm going to get a shot of espresso, and then I'm going to go in here these more really fabulous work by really fabulous scholars, and to know that we're then going to publish it and it's going to be out there. That work will be on people's CVs. It will help them get jobs in the academy. It will help this work become a legitimate thing that students will read and think about and cite and move kind of forward in the world, rather than maybe falling through some of the cracks or people not knowing where to place this kind of thing that they want to talk about. And I think that is really important work that we can all do, and that just the number of people that are here and the kind of buy-in from participants, and I just feel like this is one of the positive sides of academia, of what the life of the mind can actually do when it's treated as a real thing. I don't know. Yeah. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, well, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Which Hetty has asked me to ask, but just while I'm resetting here, just as a personal comment, I feel like as somebody who just reached tenure and is using that opportunity to broaden the capacity of academia, broaden the possibilities for academics to engage, I really appreciate that. It's really brave, and I don't think it's done as often as people think they might do it.
I think it's funny. I was on a panel like years ago when I was a grad student. It was one of these combined AMS SMTs, and it was the SMT Committee on the Status of Women, and I was asked to give a little like 10-minute position piece, and I was on a panel with a bunch of other young scholars, and then somebody in the question time got up and said, "You guys should be doing more of this. It's so great to see it." And it was an older person, and I remember saying, "This is not our job. Like, I don't choose." I think the question was, why don't we see more of these papers on the panel sessions? And I was like, we are doing work and we are submitting abstracts, but we are not the people that get chosen to be on those panel selections. I said, that is your job. Like, you need to like do this work of like opening the door for people. And people were shocked that I'd said it at the time, because I was like in this like very precarious kind of grad student position, and I just sort of said, that's not my job, that's your job, like do it. And people were like, oh, okay. But like now I'm actually at that point, and like tenure, like the whole idea of it is that you can therefore pursue your intellectual goals without being worried about a certain kind of backlash. But the whole tenure system is also set up like you have to toe the line for so long that by the time you get tenure, most people who have gotten it are the people who are good at towing the line. So they're in this mold of towing the line. So I think the more precarious academia is, the more responsibility those of us who've managed to claw our way in have to make more space.
Well, I appreciate that perspective.
But you said you had another question.
That was it. No, the other question was about the question is about Canada and the relationship of this conference and the particular issues that it's dealing with around queerness and particularly racial scholarship and integrating racial perspectives into queer studies and gender studies and music scholarship in general.
Right.
Do you perceive a particularly Canadian approach to these issues that differs from, say, an American approach or an international approach?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Australia, so being in Canada, particularly Vancouver, I'm from Melbourne, is very familiar to me. Like, the money has the Queen on it, and the plastic notes that are very colourful, and also the way in which multiculturalism is talked about, and the acknowledgement of traditional people and lands. These are all kind of institutionalized things that are very familiar to me as a non-American, as a British diaspora, neo-colonial subject from elsewhere who both feels like a full participant in the West, but also someone for whom like the sort of centrality of Europe and the very established kind of whiteness of America are quite foreign to me as a person. And I definitely think that, I mean, just the fact that there is a funding body to whom we could put this kind of project that comes from government money that was like, yes, this is something we will support. There's nowhere, there's no system, there's no apparatus in the States to do that kind of work, and to be in a space where the traditional people of the land are acknowledged at the start of the conference, I think just calls into being a certain relationship to place and to space that yes, I think the Canadianness gave this a kind of extra access to certain ways of thinking and certain ways of negotiating the really fraught divide between the kind of institutional system in which the university and academia reside and the world and its effects on people that this particular conference is trying to address, is trying to get at. So I do think that being here in Canada makes a difference.